All right, welcome everybody. I'm doing another live stream for this week for our online communities. If you guys are new to our community, welcome. My name is Ty Hicks, founder of mentalhealthcoaching.com and the SSS Brain Retraining Method. And we put out these free episodes for you guys because we want to serve everybody. And my sincere belief is that nobody deserves to live with a life of anxiety and depression. Anybody can learn to live a life without them if they learn the right skills and systems and strategies, and that's what we try to teach. Today, I wanted to just share something short, and I'll try to keep it short anyway, and it pertains to relationships because this was sparked by a conversation I had recently with a client, and then I've noticed this theme again and again and again. And I think that if you can really grasp just this tiny little concept, it's one of those things where small hinges swing big doors, meaning that if you can use this and apply this, then you will get very big results. At least that's been my experience when I've done it myself. And then for the people that we've had, our clients who've done this. And if you guys have questions, I see a lot of people are joining live. Welcome. Robin, Maddie, Kyler, great to see you guys. If anybody has questions, go ahead and put those in the comments, and I will be happy to answer those once I teach this little piece of content. I don't think it'll take very long, just a few minutes here. So, anxiety comes about in relationships for a variety of different reasons, but this client I was speaking to recently, she and her partner had a really bad argument and a bad fight, and they basically were kind of like no longer speaking to each other for a period of a couple of days. And she was feeling really upset and ignored, basically. Like she felt like her needs were not really being acknowledged or honored or validated. And the thing was that she was right. You know, her partner, her husband, she told me the situation, and I was listening, and I was like, yeah, your husband's kind of being a dick right now, right? So it's not that she was wrong, right? She basically, the situation was she had some celebration. I can't remember. I think it was an anniversary, or it might have been Valentine's Day, or I forget. But basically, he didn't do anything. He didn't make an effort. He didn't put in, any type of sincere effort. And she felt really unseen. She felt unappreciated. She felt hurt by that. And it's not that she was wrong to feel hurt by that. And I told her, I'm like, hey, I think your feelings are pretty valid here in this situation. But the challenge that we were running into was she was in her head saying, my marriage is falling apart, right? She went to that sort of extreme universal language that some of you guys have heard me teach about before, right? When we change the language and the meaning that we put on a situation, we change the emotional response that we have about that situation. And so as we dug in, we redefined her problem in much more solvable terms, because that's one of the big things that will create anxiety in a relationship is we define our problem in unsolvable terms. So we'll say, my marriage is falling apart. That's a very overwhelming, anxiety-inducing way of languaging the situation. As we investigated, come to find out what it really was is that they had a couple communication blockages because he had this pattern of not giving to her, and she resented that he was not giving to her. And so we dug in on it a little bit, and I said, okay, let's put ourselves in your husband's shoes for just a second. It's not about who's right and who's wrong. Like, forget the whole right versus wrong dynamic. Let's just try to figure out how to get you the outcome that you want, which is a successful marriage where you both are fulfilled and you both feel like your needs are being honored and met. So let's just take a look in his shoes for a second. And I said, if I were speaking to him right now, what would he say about the situation? And she had a tough time with this. And usually when I coach clients on this, they have a tough time because this is a good learning moment for you guys, I hope anyway. This has served me. Is what I will do with my clients very often is they'll be so in their head about a situation. And what I will do is I will have them imagine leaving their body and entering into the body of their partner and thinking what their partner thinks and feeling what their partner feels and really putting themselves like quite literally in their partner's shoes. I'll say like, okay, cool. What would your husband really say if he were talking to me? And that's a challenge for people. But as soon as we truly put ourselves in the other person's shoes, 9 times out of 10, I'm able to solve a relationship issue with somebody like that because it's almost always that we're not appreciating what the other person is feeling. Okay, and you don't have to agree with what the other person is feeling, You just need to appreciate what the other person is feeling. Because basically, it's not that she was wrong to do this, it's just that her strategy was not effective. She was just getting pissed off that her husband wasn't doing what she wanted. She was getting hurt and upset and irritated. And as she got hurt and upset and irritated, they went from being closer, she started to pull away. And as she started to pull away, he started to pull away too. And so the two of them became more and more separated. And then that was kind of the whole complaint that she had, was that there was so much distance between them and there was no emotional needs being met. So anyway, so I had her put herself in her husband's shoes, and I said, if your husband were talking to me, what would he say about the situation? And, to paraphrase, just to kind of get the long story short version for you guys, is that basically what she said was that he was feeling disrespected. Now, she had no intention of making him feel disrespected, right? She didn't agree that he should feel disrespected. But come to find out, that's how he was feeling about it. As soon as she put herself in his shoes, she realized he was feeling disrespected about an argument they had a week prior about something about parenting the kids. I can't remember the details. Okay, and so what she realized is that respect was the missing ingredient. So I asked her, I said, okay, how important on a scale of 0 to 10 is it for your husband to feel respected? She was like, oh, 11, 12. I said, okay, is it the most important thing for him to feel in a relationship? She said, yes, absolutely. I said, okay, great. And if he doesn't feel respected, how much love flows out of him? And that's when it clicked for her. She said, oh, 0. And so what she finally realized was that even though she didn't intend to, the way that she had approached this like co-parenting situation with her husband had made him feel disrespected. And when he feels disrespected, he's not going to meet her needs. And so this is the takeaway I really want you guys to get, because this is what I shared with her. I said, look, when other people don't meet our needs, it's not that you're wrong to be upset or frustrated by that. It's just that sitting around and pouting and getting irritated and sitting and hoping and praying that they somehow wake up and meet your needs first is not a very effective strategy. And so what I told her is, you're wanting him to be loving to you, and then you'll show him respect in the way that he perceives respect. And I said, you got the order wrong. What you've got to be willing to do is you have to be willing to go first, right? You have to be willing to give first. You have to meet his needs, and then he can meet your needs. Because if he doesn't feel respected by you, no love is going to flow out of him. And we can call that unfair. We can put labels on him and say, oh, well, he's being narcissistic. And we can diagnose and pathologize, and we can go, no, that's not fair. I'm only going to be in a relationship with people who meet my needs. I see all sorts of bullshit like that on social media these days, right? All of these mental health gurus want to tell you that anybody who's a little bit rude or a little bit mean to you, they're a narcissist, cut them out of their life, right? I'm not a fan of that. My approach, my philosophy is that the walls that we put up to protect ourselves become the walls that imprison us. And so the more walls we put up that disconnect us from other people, and we say, no, screw you, you're not doing what I want you to do, you're not meeting my needs, fine, I'm going to sit here behind my wall, I'm not going to do anything for you until you make a concession and come towards me. I think that a lot of these people who are talking about narcissistic behavior and stuff, they have a really good intention, but people misinterpret this, and they think that any time somebody's being a little selfish, or they're a little inside of their own head and they're not meeting your needs right away, that immediately makes them like a narcissist. You need to cut them out of your life, or you need to do something dramatic. And quite honestly, I think that's bullshit, because people are using that as justification to break off relationships, and human beings are hardwired for connection, right? Breaking off a relationship should be the method of last resort, not the method of first resort, right? Pulling back and putting a wall up and saying, no, I'm not gonna come towards you and be nice to you and do what you need. I'm not gonna meet your needs until you meet my needs. That's ultimately a selfish behavior. It's not great, right? And so I think that ends up leading into marriages and relationships where one person pulls away, and then the other person goes, fine, you're pulling away from me, I'll pull away too. And then the other person goes, fine, I'll pull away even more. And then you get separation. The way that you break that pattern is one person has to be big enough to say, all right, you know what? even though I don't feel like my needs are being met, I'm going to put your needs first. I'm going to make sure you feel accepted, validated, loved, respected, whatever it is that that person needs. And then I'm going to trust that as I meet your needs, you'll come to the table and meet my needs, okay? And this is now some people, like if you truly try to meet their needs and there's no reciprocation after a period of time, then you might have a situation where the relationship is not going to pan out. But I will tell you in my experience, 9 times out of 10, like one person will say, "Oh, I'm giving them everything. I gave them everything. I did everything for them." And what it usually is that you gave them everything except what they really needed, right? And so you may have taken out the trash and done the dishes and taken care of the kids, but did you really make him feel respected? Or did you really make her feel seen? Or did you really make that person feel safe, for example? So people's emotional needs are not, what somebody wants to receive is not always what we feel is convenient to give to somebody else, right? And so that's something worth keeping in mind. But anyway, the bottom line of what I told her is stop waiting for him to go first. You have to be willing to go first. You need, like, if you make a relationship about what am I receiving or what am I not receiving, then that's what we call like being like a level 1 lover, basically. You're being kind of, even though you're not a selfish person, that pattern of thinking becomes selfish. And it basically makes your partner feel like there's no reason for them to engage. So if instead you can go, okay, look, even though I don't agree that he felt disrespected, I didn't intend for him to feel disrespected. And even though he's being a little bit of a jerk to me, let me be willing to go first and apologize and show him some respect, and let me trust that will create an opening. And that's what it did for her. So anyway, worked for her, works for me, works for people that I coach and do this with. I'll leave you with one final little concept just to kind of sync all this together. Is I came up with this visualization to kind of explain this concept before, and I call it the cybernetic loop. So if you think of like an infinity sign, right, and imagine both people in a relationship on either side of that infinity sign, right? And so what we tend to do in relationships is when one person isn't doing what we want, right, we kind of just look at them and go like, why aren't you doing what I want? Why aren't you meeting my needs? Why aren't you talking the way I want to talk? Why aren't you, etc. Okay? And what I have found to be a very, very effective tool, and this works probably in 9 out of 10 situations, is rather than just looking at the partner's behavior that you don't like, right? And we'll call those outputs, right? Instead of looking at the outputs from your partner that you don't like, what instead I think is a better way of doing it is let's look at the two of you as a pattern. Let's look at it as a cycle. Let's look at it as you're sending something in their direction, and then they're sending something back to you in your direction, right? And a lot of people get like butthurt about this basically because they have good intent. Like they'll say something with a really, really good intent, but then their partner reacts in like a really anxious or uptight or angry way. And we go, what the hell? Why are you getting so mad at me? I was just trying to help you. My intent was good, right? And your intent may have been great. That's fantastic, right? But intent is sometimes irrelevant in terms of inputs and outputs, right? Like you might have the best intent, but that tone of voice that you used, or that word choice that you said, or that way you made eye contact with your partner, or maybe you don't even know what it is that you did, but it set your partner off and it got you a certain output from your partner that you didn't like so much. So we can just get pissed off at the outputs, but that's not going to do very much for you. That's just going to make you feel anxious because you'll just be focusing on what you can't control. And that's the number one thing that induces anxiety, is focusing on what you can't control. So if you just focus on the fact that, man, my partner didn't do what I wanted on Valentine's Day, it doesn't get you very far. You're going to feel stuck. You're going to feel powerless. You might even feel depressed. It's not going to help the relationship. A better way is to go, okay, well, hold on a second. Every action that he or she is doing is in response to something I am doing or not doing. So maybe I need to change my approach a little bit. Maybe there's something I'm saying or doing that is setting them off that I'm not even aware of. Maybe there's something I need to be sensitive to that I'm not sensitive on at the moment, right? So just zooming out a little bit and looking at it in terms of inputs and outputs tends to help hugely, because it will create breakthroughs where people didn't have breakthroughs before. They could go, holy shit, for 10 years, I kept trying to tell them I loved them verbally day after day after day, and it never really clicked for them. Like we'll start to figure out where the discrepancies are, and we can reverse engineer solutions. If you want to get a different output, you have to insert a new input. And that's just a general rule of thumb I found to be applicable in any area, career, your physical health, right? Anything, right? And most people spend so much time just being upset that they're not getting the output they want, instead of asking themselves, what input do I need to get the output that I want? And I think that that's a much better framework, because it puts you back in charge of living your own life and being in charge of your own life. And so I'm much more in favor of empowering you rather than us focusing on what we can't control and what we dislike, because that's what will make you feel stuck. So in a relationship, my recommendation is, if you're getting an output that you don't like, ask yourself, okay, well, what is the input that happened that's making that output come about, right? And sometimes people misinterpret me on this point, and they think that I'm accusing you of like I'm blaming you, the listener, as in like, okay, well, if your partner is being disrespectful, it's your fault, okay? One thing I would really encourage you to write down, or like really sink into your subconscious, is blame never empowers anybody. Right? So this is not a blame thing. Sometimes people are so rooted in that like right versus wrong mentality that they hear what I'm saying and they think what I'm doing is I'm shifting blame. I'm making the person who didn't do what you wanted in the right, and I'm making you in the wrong. No. What I'm saying is, in a sense, neither one of you is right or wrong. It's just, think of the relationship in terms of inputs and outputs, right? And if you do it that way, it becomes a much easier game for you to play in terms of how to get your emotional needs met, because you can start from, okay, well, I am fully in control of what I do, what I say, what I believe, the emotion, the energy that I bring to the relationship. And if I'm not pleased with the output I'm getting from my partner, it would be so much wiser for me to start trying to change me first, instead of me stressing out about trying to change them, because that's just going to make me feel out of control and stuck. And that's why a lot of times people feel like their only option is to disconnect from the relationship. Because when we just stare at the other person and go, why aren't they doing what I want them to do? It makes us slowly feel convinced over time that unless that person over there does or says what I need them to do, I can't feel whole in and of myself. And that's why people are like, now the popular trend in pop psychology now is, let's just disconnect the relationship. And I'll just go find somebody else who can do that. Okay. So anyway, there's a lot to unpack here. I want to also provide a disclaimer. This definitely does not apply in a physical abuse situation, right? A sexual abuse situation, some like those extreme scenarios like that, right? In a situation where your safety is being threatened, or the safety of someone you love, absolutely get out. You just get out of there, find a resource, find a way to do so. There are plenty of emergency, opportunities to do that. Call a friend, call a family member, call the authorities. We got to get you out of that situation, okay? But in the vast majority of, relationships, I think that this concept is a good place to get started. Not applicable in every situation, but definitely worth considering, okay? So thank you guys for joining. I see a comment in here, and I'm curious if there are any questions. I see some good... some comments. It seems like you guys found this useful, so thanks for tuning in. Let's see what I got. One, a guy that I dated casually, we've been in contact. He just lost his mom. Is it appropriate for me to ask him out? Yeah. So since I don't know the intricacies of the situation, I think that you just need to trust your feelings. I wouldn't. I mean, if he just lost his mom, is it appropriate for me to ask him out? Yeah, I mean, you just would need to feel what you feel is right. I would say trust your judgment on that. I mean, remember, it's always his choice whether he says yes or no, right? So I think that in terms of appropriate, I wouldn't worry so much about appropriate. I don't think it's not like you're being disrespectful or anything, right? I mean, if you're attracted to him and if he's processing the grief in a way where you think that it would be nice to take him out, I mean, sure, go ahead. He can always use his choice to either say yes or say no. I think that in a situation where somebody is grieving and they are in a current monogamous relationship, if you're the partner and your partner has just lost a loved one, I think that it would be important to recognize that some of their emotional energy is not going to be freed up so much. So their ability to probably meet your needs is going to be a little bit lesser in that particular context. But in a situation like this where he's a free agent and he has the total choice to either take you up on that or to turn you down or to say, hey, I think I need to wait a few weeks. I don't see anything wrong with that. And honestly, that might even be something that he might welcome, perhaps, right? Because very often people who are in the grieving process, they feel alone, they feel isolated. And so some type of a gesture like that, right? Even if he decides to turn you down, right? Just a gesture like that can be a gift in a sense, because it can be like, wow, someone still wants to connect with me. Someone still wants to be with me, even though I don't even really feel like connecting with myself right now. A lot of times people feel like that in a grieving scenario. So yeah, great question. Okay, guys, I think that's all the questions I got for today. Thanks again for tuning in. And again, if any of you guys have not taken us up on our offer, we do a free coaching session for anybody in our online community who wants it. Just go to mentalhealthcoaching.com and I'll spend a half an hour with you just helping you individually on whatever your issue is. So there's no gimmicks or anything like that. It's just me trying to help you for half an hour. So anyway, thanks for tuning into our lives. I'll see you guys next week. Take care. Bye.